get a lot of questions from folks that are just getting into either indoor tactical shooting or close quarters battle, and for those folks, we generally recommend the MP5 line of submachine guns. Now, in the real world, if this was an actual firearm, this would be classified as a submachine gun, mostly because it's a pistol caliber in a rifle format. So because pistols are generally lower powered than rifle cartridges, and the fact that it has a shorter barrel so it's easier to get around corners, makes these guns more suited towards indoor battles or close quarter battle, or as some people like to refer to it as CQB. So a lot of guys ask, why do you want to use the pistol caliber round versus a rifle caliber for close quarter battle? Well, the answer is if you're using a standard like a NATO 5.56, like the M16 and the M4 shoot, they could easily over-penetrate. So if you miss your target and blow a hole in the wall, you might get one of your guys that's on the other side of the wall. Versus a pistol caliber, which is a much lower powered round, will not penetrate the wall and won't take out one of your guys by accident. So it's more suited towards a close quarter battle environment. First up today is the Well G5K, which is actually a pretty good facsimile of the H&K MP5K model, which is basically the pistol version of the MP5. This has a plastic receiver, but it has a metal gearbox. So the nice thing is you save a lot of the weight using the plastic components, but it gives you all of the performance of the metal gearbox, so you get really good performance at a lighter weight and a lower cost. Some of the features of this gun are it has the standard MP5 rear sight, which allows you to rotate between different aperture settings for different lighting conditions. It also has the forward grip, which allows you to use it in a two-handed configuration, which makes it very stable for close quarter battle and getting around corners and that sort of thing. It also has the standard rear sling swivel, so you can mount a sling on it and carry it as a backup weapon. This gun comes out of the box with about a 300 feet per second velocity, which is pretty much what you would expect for any gun using a full metal gearbox like this. It does use an 8.4 volt stick battery that fits into the upper part of the receiver. One thing I would like to tell you is that when you go to recharge it, it's easier to just remove the forward grip and leave the battery in it and charge it up that way, versus having to take apart the front and rear of the gun to remove the battery for recharging. One little piece of trivia for you guys out there that are actual firearm owners: if this were an actual gun, this would be classified as a pistol. But because it has this forward grip on it, the federal government would classify this as a Class 3 weapon. So it might as well be a machine gun, even though it's semi-automatic. So if you actually have any pistols at home that are actual firearms, don't mount forward grips on it, because you will get yourself into trouble. But because this is airsoft, we can do whatever we want. Next up is the GSG 522 PK, which is basically another MP5 clone, except this time it's in full metal, versus the first one we showed you, which had a plastic receiver. This has a full metal receiver, as well as the metal gearbox. The plastic one being a little bit lighter, weighed in at around 2 pounds 13 ounces. This one weighs in at around 4 pounds 6 ounces, so it's roughly twice the weight of it. So this is a fairly heavy gun, and it's very realistic feeling. The 522 gives you several upgrades over the G5K in that, number one, it gives you a flash hider / muzzle brake on the front of the barrel. Now, I know this is an airsoft gun and it's not like you really get a muzzle flash from this thing, but it does look cool on this kind of gun. The other thing it gives you is a scope mount as standard issue on this particular model. Most MP5s come without the scope on it, and you have to add either a claw mount or some other kind of sight onto it if you want to add optics. This comes with a scope mount standard. This also gives you the front rail assembly, so you have 3 rails for adding additional accessories like flashlights, lasers, and forward grips. Now obviously this doesn't have the forward grip like the G5K, but those come pretty cheap and you can put on whatever kind you like and get that thing without spending a lot of money. This also has the rear sling swivel just like the G5K, but in addition to that, it also gives you a front sling mount on the front hand grip, as well as another sling mount on the front of the trigger guard, so you can easily add a 3-point sling to this particular gun. Now this comes out of the box with about 320 feet per second, which is basically in the ballpark of what you're getting with the G5K. But what it does give you is a 9.6 volt battery in the upper receiver, so it gives you a much higher rate of fire than the G5K gives you. Next up is the Well G5K PDW, which is basically the same as an MP5K with a PDW folding stock on it. Basically this is a standard issue H&K kind of stock. You just raise it up and fold it to use it from a compact position like this, or you can open it up and shoot it from the shoulder and get a much more stable shooting position with this gun. One thing you want to notice with any of the MP5K models is that they all have these plates that are welded on to the back of the receiver, so you have to use a stock like this if you want to put a stock on it. If you want to use either the telescoping stock or the standard fixed stock on one of these guns, it's not possible with an MP5K because of these plates. Another obvious upgrade from the G5K is the GSG 522 PK folding stock model, which is basically the same as the GSG 522, except it gives you the PDW style folding stock on this particular gun, which makes it a little more stable from firing from the shoulder. It also gives you the standard GSG upgrades like the upper sight rail, the forward rails, the additional sling mounts, and the full metal stock, so it makes it a fairly heavy gun at around 4 pounds 8 ounces. Now, if you want to upgrade from the MP5K models, you can step up to the GSG 522 RIS, which is basically a full-sized MP5, except it gives you the addition of a side-folding G36 style stock on this gun. One thing that we've heard a lot from our customers is that they didn't like the front handguard on this, in that getting the battery in and out of this thing was a real nightmare. So for those folks, we added the front infrared designator, so this gives you an external battery box for getting the battery in and out a lot easier. Otherwise, disassembling this was a real nightmare, so we decided to do everybody a favor and add the infrared designator as standard issue on this particular gun. Now, because this is a much larger gun and because it's also full metal, this is much heavier than the MP5K models. This particular one weighs in at around 5 pounds 12 ounces, so it's a fairly realistic, heavy feeling battle rifle. This is also a full blowback gun, so each time you shoot it, the slide moves back and forth, so it gives you a little feeling of recoil for realism. The other thing that you're going to like about the GSGs is that they come standard with the 9.6 volt batteries, so it's a little bit of an upgrade over the 8.4 standard batteries that you see in most guns. Now, for those of you that prefer the custom guns, you're really going to like the classic Army MP5 A4 RIS. This is basically the standard MP5, but with all the trimmings on it, which includes in this case the upper scope mount, which is a claw mount in this case. This gives you a standard Picatinny rail that you can mount any standard scope to. In this case, we've got an open style one, which I prefer for CQB because it gives you a wide field of view, so there's nothing blocking your target, so you get fairly easy target acquisition with this kind of gun. It also gives you the tri-rail on the front for adding additional accessories like lasers, flashlights, forward grips, that kind of stuff. The main thing you're going to notice about this gun is that it's a fixed stock. The thing I like about that is it gives you a lot of room to put your battery. I know a lot of guys like to put the telescoping stock on there to try to save some space, but then you got to put your battery somewhere else. So I personally prefer the fixed stock because you can put any size battery in this thing that you want. Now, you may have heard me refer to a few of the guns as being full metal versions. It's important to note that with all of the MP5s, the lower receiver or the lower trigger group on all of the guns is a one-piece polymer configuration, so there's really no such thing as a full metal MP5. With that in mind, this is the metal version of this gun with the metal upper receiver, and this weighs in at 6 pounds 14 ounces, which is pretty much the heaviest gun that we tried today. This gun gives you a velocity of around 350 feet per second, which is pretty much on par with what all the other guns are doing. There's really not a major difference between the cheapest and the most expensive gun. And 350 feet per second is right in the ballpark where you want to keep your velocity too. Unless you really hate your friends, of course, and you really want to sting them and piss them off, then you might want to get into those guns that have the 400 plus feet per second velocities on them. I get a lot of guys ask me about putting silencers on their guns. I'm personally not a fan of them because to me it just makes the gun longer than it needs to be and it's harder to get around corners. The whole idea with a CQB gun is to keep it as compact as possible for getting in and out of tight spots, so adding extra length to your barrel really doesn't make any sense to me. Obviously in the real world these make your gun quieter so it's easier to sneak up on people, but in the airsoft world these really don't do a darn thing for you, so I personally don't like them. But if you want them, we got them. If you want to make your gun look customized, come on in, we'll help you find one of these for your gun. If you have any more questions about CQB or any of the MP5 guns, feel free to stop in here at the store. We'll be glad to sit down with you, let you try them out so you know exactly what you're getting when you get home, so there won't be any surprises. So until the next time, we'll see you again.